The longships arrived without warning. One morning, as mist clung low to the cold Atlantic waves, dark shapes emerged on the horizon. Their carved dragon heads cut through the fog like living beasts, their sails swollen by the wind. To the Vikings, this journey had already become legend. They had crossed endless water, chased by storms and hunger, driven by stories of a western land rich with timber, game, and soil untouched by kings. When the keels scraped against the shore, the men leapt into shallow water, laughing with relief. They had survived the ocean. They believed the hardest part was over. The land before them was unlike anything they had known. Dense forests stretched as far as the eye could see, broken by rivers that glittered like silver snakes. The air was heavy with the smell of pine, wet earth, and wild plants. Birds cried from unseen branches, and the ground was soft beneath their boots. To the Vikings, it felt raw and powerful, a land not yet shaped by human hands. They named it Vinland, after the wild grapes they claimed to find growing along the riverbanks. To them, it was a sign of favor from the gods. The Norse quickly set to work. They raised timber walls, built turf houses, and stacked supplies brought from Greenland. Axes rang through the forest as trees fell. Smoke curled into the sky from cooking fires. The camp looked strong, organized, and permanent. In their minds, this was the beginning of a new Norse settlement, another foothold in a growing Viking world. What they did not realize was that they were never alone. From the shadows of the trees, eyes watched every movement. The people of this land had seen strange things before: storms, migrating animals, rival tribes, but never men who arrived in floating wooden beasts. The Native Americans moved silently through the forest, their feet barely disturbing the ground. They studied the newcomers with careful patience. They noticed the metal weapons that flashed in the sun, the heavy armor, the loud voices. These strangers were dangerous, but also unfamiliar. For days, neither side approached the other. Then came the first meeting. A small group of natives stepped into the open, hands visible, movements slow. The Vikings froze, hands on sword hilts, hearts pounding. Neither side understood the other's language, but gestures spoke enough. There was tension, fear, and curiosity in equal measure. Trade followed. Red cloth, bright and strange, was exchanged for fine furs. Milk and metal tools were offered for food. The Vikings believed this was proof of their superiority. In their world, trade often came before control. They laughed, boasted, and grew careless. The natives watched and remembered. They saw how quickly the strangers became relaxed. They noticed how the Vikings wandered beyond their camp in small groups. They learned the sound of their footsteps, the rhythm of their daily routines, and the moments when guards were weakest. Then something went wrong. The sagas would later speak of misunderstandings, of a sudden movement, of livestock frightening the natives, of a weapon raised too quickly. Whatever the cause, fear turned to anger. Words were useless. A shout was answered by steel. Blood touched the soil of Vinland. The Vikings expected the kind of fight they knew: a clash, a charge, a clear enemy. Instead, the forest went silent. Arrows struck without warning. A man fell, clutching his throat. Another screamed as a spear appeared from between the trees and vanished just as quickly. The natives did not stay to celebrate. They disappeared into the woods, leaving the Vikings stunned and furious. Heavy armor, once a symbol of strength, became a burden. The forest was thick, the ground uneven. Shields snagged on branches. Visibility was poor. The Vikings could hear movement, but could not see their attackers. Fear crept into their camp. At night, the sounds of the forest grew louder. Every crack of a branch felt like an approaching enemy. Sleep came in short, uneasy bursts. Men kept weapons close, hands sweating even in the cold air. The Vikings had crossed the ocean seeking glory. Instead, They had stepped into a land that did not welcome them, and into a war they did not yet understand. The Vikings did not realize they were losing Vinland all at once. There was no single battle, no final stand where shields broke and war cries filled the air. Instead, the loss came quietly, day by day, through fear, exhaustion, and uncertainty. The forest did not roar its victory, it whispered it. After the first clashes, the Norse tried to adapt. They strengthened their camp, raised higher walls, and posted more guards. Men stopped wandering far from the settlement. Hunting parties grew larger, heavier with weapons and armor. But this caution only slowed them down. Food became harder to find. Every trip into the forest felt like walking into a trap. The Native Americans never attacked the camp head-on. They understood the strength of Viking defenses and had no reason to smash themselves against wooden walls and iron blades. Instead, they watched and waited. They attacked when the Vikings were weakest, when they were spread out, tired or distracted. A small hunting group left at dawn and never returned. At first, the Norse assumed they were delayed. By nightfall, worry replaced confidence. At sunrise they found blood on the ground, broken arrows, and footprints that vanished into the trees. The bodies were never recovered. The message was clear: you are not safe here. Winter began to creep closer. The air grew sharper. The nights stretched longer. The Vikings had faced brutal winters before, but this land was different. They did not know its seasons, its animals, or its hidden dangers. Supplies from Greenland were limited, and no new ships were coming until the following year, if they came at all. Tension rose within the camp. Arguments broke out over decisions that once seemed simple. Some warriors demanded revenge, calling for a full assault into the forest. Others argued for retreat, reminding their leaders that Vinland was optional, survival was not. Pride clashed with reason, and neither side truly had an answer. The natives, meanwhile, remained patient. They burned a storage shed in the night and vanished before the alarm could be fully raised. A lone guard was found dead at dawn, his weapon untouched. Fear did what arrows and spears did not. It broke morale. Men slept poorly. Shadows moved at the edge of firelight. Even the strongest warriors began to doubt. They were far from home, surrounded by an enemy they could not see or predict. The gods felt distant here, and the land did not feel cursed. It felt claimed. Slowly the Vikings understood a truth they had never faced before. This land did not want them. Vinland offered resources, yes, but every tree cut and every hunt made them a target. The Native Americans were not fighting to conquer, they were fighting to endure. They could afford to wait. The Vikings could not. The decision to leave was not announced loudly. It happened in hushed conversations, in worried glances, in leaders staring at the sea longer than they stared at the forest. Pride demanded they stay. Wisdom whispered that staying meant death. When the final attacks came, they were small but precise. A boat damaged, tools stolen, food supplies reduced just enough to matter. The message repeated itself again and again. Go. At last the order was given. Under grey skies, the Vikings dismantled what they could. Timber was left behind. Heavy items were abandoned. The wounded were helped aboard the longships. There was no ceremony, no speech to honor the fallen. Vinland had taken enough. As the ships pulled away from the shore, the forest remained still. No victory cries followed them. No pursuit came. The land simply watched them leave. Back in Greenland and Iceland, the survivors spoke carefully. Some told stories of rich land and endless forests. Others spoke of shadows, of unseen enemies, of a war that could not be won. Over time the tales faded. Vinland became a rumor, then a myth. And so the Vikings disappeared from North America, not erased by defeat, but pushed away by a people who understood their home better than any invader ever could. They had crossed an ocean to find a new world. Instead, they found its guardians.